Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my! It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Psychic medium Helene Olsen and paranormal researcher Patricia Baker. Here are Supernatural Girls.
To another cutting-edge episode of Supernatural Girls. Today is August 17th, 2013, and as we've said many times in this show, time flies. Doesn't it, my fabulous partner, Patricia Baker?
It does, Helene. Welcome, everybody, to the show. It flies. This whole day went so fast, and again, I look back and wonder what happened to it, and of course, I didn't accomplish what I set out to do completely, but got a few things done, mowed the lawn. That's what I usually do on Saturdays, mow the lawn. I should say mow the weeds, because this year has been a bad year for my poor lawn, and it's turned into weed central, so it's kind of frustrating, but
yeah,
the way it is.
I just walk by it and ignore it. I don't pay attention. It looks green, so I'm happy, that's all. Got a lot of rain, so it's back being green, so that's all I need.
It is nice to see the green. Before we know it, we're going to be seeing white. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I have to say the weather has been gorgeous these last few days. And I know you know how I love to talk about the weather, but it's just been no humidity. And that
nice.
Absolutely thrills me. It thrills me to be outside and not be drenched. So, yeah.
Yeah, it feels a little too cool, though. It's almost like fall has arrived, and it's still August. So I
smells
for
like
a few
fall.
more warm days.
It smells like fall. I said to my husband,
does.
It smells like fall out there. It doesn't smell like summer anymore.
I know it.
We'll see. We'll have a few more hot days.
I hope so.
Hot days. This week they're coming. They're coming up here, New England.
Oh, good.
Hot days. Yeah. So I really feel bad. I had set a goal this summer that I was going to get to the beach because I live about a mile from the ocean, and I haven't done it yet, Patricia.
Oh, no.
So next week I'm doing it no matter what.
You must. You absolutely must. To live that close and not go is a sin.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I go a lot in the spring and the fall because I like to walk along the beach and look for things, you know, on the ground.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting. I haven't gone this summer, but the kids have gone, so that's been good. But that's the way it is. I'm going to make it a point to get there this week and do some swimming, which I haven't done in a while, so that'll be fun.
Oh, that'll be so nice.
Yeah.
Well, good, and the weather's going to get warm for you, so you're going to be all set.
That salt water solves everything, I think.
I know. It's very healing. Very healing.
It is. It's amazing. So anyway, we have an amazing guest on tonight. Why don't you tell us about her?
We have a great guest, and her name is Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and she has worked full-time in the paranormal and metaphysical field since 1983, so she's got quite a history with all of this great stuff. She's researched all kinds of entity contact experiences, both positive and negative, and she's an established author. She's written more than 50 books, including single-volume encyclopedias on a wide range of subjects, making her one of the most widely known and consulted experts in the field. And her websites are visionaryliving.com and djinnuniverse.com, and that's spelled D-J-I-N-N universe.com. So I can't wait to talk to Rosemary about the Djinn because I really don't know a lot about this. So this is going to be an exciting show. I'm going to learn something new.
It will be. But first, let's talk a little bit about the paranormal news this week, because last week we were talking about that amazing
The priest.
Well, it was tragic, the tragic accident with the young girl. But the priest showed up, and no one knew who he was. So you have the end of that story, Patricia.
I do. They actually identified the priest. He was a real person, and he was apparently traveling from one church to another, and he stopped and got out of his car and went and administered to the lady in the car. And so I have to say, even though he wasn't the angel that everybody thought he was in terms of a spirit form, he certainly was powerful because his prayers reached the heavens and that girl's life was saved. And people were amazed by what happened, by the force of his prayer. So it's a testament to the power of prayer, I guess. It was a great story. It had everybody all intrigued, and it's nice to know that we as human beings can make such a difference with our prayers.
It is, and the other part of that I picked up on very strongly is that woman who was trapped actually had enormous faith and belief in prayer.
Yes,
and so when the two of them connected, it was like this huge force of divine energy connected to them, and it was amazing. I still think it's a wonderful story, and it's one that people won't forget because they were having so much trouble. It really looked like she wasn't going to make it, and then in the next instance,
yes, it's true. I mean, her vitals were crashing, and it didn't look good for her. So after the prayer, everything turned around. They were able to release her from the car with new emergency vehicles that came with new tools, and out she came and off into the helicopter for treatment at the hospital. So it's still the power of prayer here, I think, is the message. So it's still a positive message, and it is still very intriguing, I think, for everybody.
It is, and I don't even know if it's really so much the power of prayer, but it's the power of belief in that prayer, that your own system, your own mind, your own heart, your own energy, believing that you can create a miracle, and putting all of your intention and faith into that is what I think really triggers it and opens it up.
Well, what does it say in the Scripture? I know we had a wonderful guest on last week talking about Scripture and the supernatural Scriptures, and what is it about the faith the size of a mustard seed? So,
incredible.
So
but it was a great story, and it was a very touching and heartwarming story, which we don't hear a lot in the news, so it made me happy.
Yeah, me too. So I want to hear about these Djinn things. I know you've had some experiences with them, but this is all new, like I said, to me. And apparently they're connected with all kinds of nefarious things. So we need to bring them out into the light and identify them. So let's get Rosemary on the air.
Sounds great. Let's see. Welcome, Rosemary. You're live on the air.
Hi there. How are you this evening?
Oh, we're great.
Great, Rosemary. Thanks for joining us on the show tonight.
I'm really glad to be able to do that this evening, and especially talking about one of my favorite subjects. And as you were just mentioning, not very many people are familiar with the Djinn. So I'm very glad to be putting out some information that's educating people. This is an important topic for individuals who especially are engaged in paranormal work and any kind of spiritual and metaphysical help for people with problems. They need to know about the Djinn.
Yeah,
well, Rosemary, sorry.
Go ahead, Helene.
No, I was going to say, Rosemary, you have a fascinating background, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit how you got so involved in this so many years ago.
It's really been a lifelong journey for me. I think it was part of my life plan, those things that you arrange and think about and forces you set in motion between lifetimes. I do believe in reincarnation. And when I was a kid, I was fascinated by this stuff, the paranormal, horror stories, the supernatural. And like most children, I had experiences. I had angel and fairy experiences, did not see dead people until I got much older. But psychic things happen in my family. And I think this is one of the reasons why it caught my interest at a young age, and that interest held. A lot of people, they have their experiences when they're kids. Sometimes the parents take note. Sometimes they disapprove and try and squelch it. And then these sorts of things just start fading into the background as people get older and they get more involved in the outside world. But I became fascinated. By the time I was in my teens, in my early teens I was completely hooked on these topics, and I wanted to learn as much as I could and to experience as much as I could. That's really been one of the driving forces in my work, is to roll up the sleeves and get out in the trenches as much as possible. I still have to do a lot of stack work and interviewing. It's not possible to visit every single haunted location that I write about, but I do believe in getting out into the field as much as possible. So I've been very fortunate that my personal interest merged with my professional activities. That was something else that was a driving force from an early age. I think I came out of the womb with a pencil in my hand, and I've been writing ever since. So I've merged my passion, my personal passion, with my professional passion.
Boy, that's a wonderful thing.
True life purpose, yeah.
Yeah, and and you were involved with all of this stuff so many years ago, and it wasn't as popular as it is today.
It was not. It was still on the fringes, and of course there are people today who would say it still is in the fringes, but we've moved the paranormal out of the shadows into the living room, the dining room, social conversation, the Internet, and this is a very healthy thing because people have been encouraged to talk about their experiences without fear of ridicule. I still run into that, unfortunately, today. People will often start a conversation or an email with me by saying, you're probably going to think I'm crazy, me of all people.
Yeah.
And, then they relate what's happened to them. For many people, our encounters with entities and unusual phenomena can be very upsetting. If nothing more, then it just shakes people up in terms of a worldview, something that intrudes on ordinary life in a very extraordinary way. And sometimes the experiences can be downright troubling, and people need to integrate this, to put it into a context, understand it, and integrate it into what they know about everything that is. For people who are having problems, and I deal with problem cases a lot, these can be ongoing, and they can really wear a person down. People find that when they go to conventional therapists, even their local pastor or priest, they find people skeptical or not knowledgeable enough, and they're at a loss of what to do and where to turn.
You bring up a really important point, Rosemary, because if people can't integrate this, then it remains a troubling thing, and then they need to shut it out just to get rid of it. So it is important for people to learn how to integrate it, and I think it's very important for therapists to become educated about this and learn how to talk to their clients and their patients in an effective manner so that they can find a way to embrace this or do whatever they have to do depending on what the experience is.
And unfortunately, in so many areas, we find very qualified counseling and therapeutic help dismissing a lot of these experiences as, well, it was just your imagination, or you just projected, or it was a fantasy, or it's wish fulfillment. I just completed a book on dreams. It's called Dream Messages from the Afterlife, and dreams have been a very powerful motivating force in my study throughout my entire life, because our dreams are the medium by which we have many extraordinary experiences. And even today, people say that, they take their dreams of what they feel is a real meeting with a loved one after death. They take it into therapy or counseling, and it gets dismissed as, oh, that's just part of the grieving process. It didn't really happen. It's just your wish fulfillment. And yet these people have these powerful experiences that are just as real to them as anything that they do in ordinary life. And it robs people of the power of a healing or transformative experience to treat it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're preaching to the choir with both Helene and I on this particular subject. We both, I know, feel the same way that as you do, that this is a very important aspect of who we are as people, that just because someone's passed doesn't mean you can't have contact with them anymore. So these people are having contact through their dreams, and it should be developed, not ignored or not dismissed. So, I mean, that's an opportunity. That's an open door for someone to really have an enlightening experience and maybe even heal more of that relationship. So, yeah, we totally agree, right, Helene?
Well, yeah, and I get a lot of calls like that, wanting to know if it was really a visit from their loved one. And to me, the answer really is, if you experienced it as though it was real, and then you woke up and it didn't fade the way a brain dream will fade, and you feel that you were interacting in that place, then yes, that was a real contact. And people have reported just amazing forgiveness, amazing resolution to whatever problems were left undone before their loved one passed, amazing reconnection in love. And I just think that it's remarkable that today there are so many that just dismiss these interactions, as you said, and act as though the person was just making it all up. And it makes me sad.
At the very least,
I hear it a lot.
The experiences need to be treated as a possibility, at least an open-ended possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Since ancient times, all around the world, human beings have recognized that dreams are an interface between our world and the spirit world, whether it's the afterlife with the dead or other realms, the realms of the angels, the realms of demons, all of these entities that we have contact with. And on the troubling side of things, people have dream invasions where negative entities can get a hook into a person, so to speak, and literally invade the dreamscape and create nightmare conditions, even types of possession, a draining away of the life force. So we have both ends of the spectrum here, from the horrific to the mystical and spiritual even, that are often dismissed by people that individuals go to for help, saying, what's going on and how do I explain it and what do I do with it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's about time that changes and gives people a whole different understanding, but I think we're ways off from that. So people really have to look around for therapists who understand this concept and can walk them through it with an open heart and an open mind. Very important to do that.
And even more than the therapy end of things is people who are in religious institutions definitely need to be broadened in their education on these kinds of experiences. These are often the first kinds of people that are turned to when individuals are looking for answers. And sometimes they're at a loss, or things get dismissed as illusion, or any sort of paranormal experience is written off as demonic. And these also are not only are they not adequate, they're not correct either. They are woefully misinformed.
So it's not helpful when people are talking about either a dream experience that's important or just even an experience in waking reality. Because according to your book, which I loved, by the way, The Djinn Connection, which is available on Amazon.com, and again, that's spelled D-J-I-N-N, there's so much information in here and some wonderful stories that you recount, and I couldn't put it down. It was a great read, and I mean, I was so surprised to see the connection. It's everywhere between the shadow people, the ETs, the fairy realm. The Djinn are really they're involved in a lot of different things, and I guess that's what you were referring to or talking about a little bit earlier, when somebody could have something like this walk right into their dreams and not even know what in the world's going on with it. So can you tell us something about these beings? What are they?
They are a supernatural race of beings who were on this planet before we were. And we find these similar stories about other entities in our mythologies going back to ancient times, that human beings were not the first intelligent species to be on this place. There were others that preceded us that we dominated or got rid of. And there are different stories and legends as to how those things happened. The Djinn are best known in Middle Eastern lore, which does not make them Middle Eastern. And I find it very odd that people want to say, oh, yeah, well, that's a Middle Eastern thing. It doesn't pertain to anything over here. It does, because the entities who live on this earth and are attached to this earth in other dimensions really don't pay any attention to our political, racial, and ethnic boundaries. They're everywhere, and they interact with all of us, and they have since the very beginning. We have just put different names and labels on them, and various cultures have developed their mythologies and folklore in different directions on that. But the Djinn are very powerful. They're masterful shapeshifters. They lost out to us. In early Arabian legend, they were creatures literally made of the winds who dominated the planet and got too arrogant and displeased God. The story that's told about them in the Quran is that they lost out when human beings were created because they did not bow in homage to us. The angels did. God told the angels to bow, and the angels did, but the Djinn refused. And so they incurred God's disfavor that way, and they got pushed out. In modern terms, that's literally into another dimension.
Now, when we think about, in this culture, when we think about genies, we're thinking about the genie in the bottle that comes out and grants you 3 wishes, but you're saying this is far from that. The
Djinn are the original source behind the genie legends. The word genie is a corruption of the word jinn, which means the hidden ones. When the old Arabian folk tales, which go way back to ancient times and were passed on orally, when they were written down and translated for Western audiences, the word jinn got corrupted as genie. And some of those stories that we're familiar with are about the genies who are trapped in vessels or bottles who are liberated, and then they grant favors. The best-known story, of course, is Aladdin and his lamp.
Right.
We have a tradition of 3 favors, 3 wishes, but actually Aladdin just gets unlimited favors, including the girl. You know, he winds up with money and the girl. But one of the keynotes behind these stories is that the genie or the Djinn is always very tricky, not to be trusted, will find a way to turn the wishes against the person. Well, part of that can be explained by the characteristics that are described of these entities over the centuries. They are deal makers. They will do things for people in exchange for something. It's never, a free ride. And so the favors that are granted, the wishes that are granted, are in exchange for the liberation from the imprisonment in the vessel. In all magical traditions, there are ways for capturing non-physical entities into containers with various magical rituals and formulae for asking them or even coercing them to do things, which is always a very dangerous and tricky thing to do. Well, the Djinn really never made it into our culture beyond the fairy tales, and that's one reason why we're very unfamiliar with them. And we have no idea that they really are participating in all of our paranormal and entity contact experiences under different guises because they are masterful shapeshifters.
So they can appear as anything? I mean, shapeshifters, usually that's what that means. It can take on any shape, any form, any time.
They can appear as humans, beautiful and ugly, animals.
Oh.
Their
they
favorite...
like to appear as angels. That's what I noticed.
I think they're often mistaken as demons. They have a very strong connection to fairies. They participate in the ET abduction scenario. There are some researchers who feel that all the entities we label ETs are just forms of Djinn. I believe they account for mysterious creature sightings, the half-human, half-animal, weird shapes that disturb people when we see them. And what I have discovered in my research, and it really took me years to piece a lot of this together, is that we're dealing with a hostile faction of them. They're not all bad or evil. They're like human beings, and some of them have grudges, and some of them are nasty. Some of them are very gentle and benign and enlightened, and others are thugs and gangsters and even terrorists. The ones that are causing us the problems are tipped toward the negative end of the scale. They've got a grudge against humanity. Some of them either want revenge for having been pushed out of this place, or they want to take it back, and or both. And I believe that a lot of our negative paranormal encounters, like possession, oppression, negative hauntings that don't resolve, all kinds of entity abduction experiences, and encounters with entities who seem to, literally vampirize our life force, that many of these experiences are in fact Djinn, and we don't know it because we think they're something else.
And how would you identify them? Is there a way that you can tell what you're dealing with? I mean, sometimes these experiences just get so strange. You can demand a name, correct?
Well, you can always ask for a name, but the Djinn don't communicate a whole lot when they are engaged in negative interactions with people. It's the less we know about them, the better it is for them. And in some of the negative cases that I've investigated, when they do communicate, it's usually to express their displeasure over the presence of people or something that people have done that have offended them or their kind.
What kinds of things do they find so offensive that they have to traumatize us this way?
Well, sometimes it's occupying the space they want to be in. There are entities who have connections to the land, and I just for the general sake call them land-based entities. They have a literal connection to the land, and there are places on the planet where boundaries between our dimension and other dimensions are thinner or more permeable, and entities can use these as doorways. I think sometimes they kind of fall through accidentally, like some of the odd things we see from time to time. But there are other beings like the Djinn who know where these places are and use them purposely to come and occupy this particular space. Well, if we build a house on land that the Djinn have been used to having as their own for quite some time, they may take an exception to that. They may not like human activity. And I have had this sort of thing expressed a number of times in investigations that they want people to go away because they are occupying literally territory that the Djinn consider to be theirs.
Can you give us an example of that where you've done an investigation and instead of just a simple haunting, it's really much more? It's really something like what you just described.
Yes. You were asking a little earlier about how do you know, which I would like to address that because that gets into these cases too, is that I never automatically assume anything at the beginning. More and more I'm inclined to think that a lot of these cases are Djinn, but I never assume in the beginning. And because negative entities can all do the same nasty things, it sometimes takes a while to sort things out as to what's really going on. Djinn will often account for what I call kitchen sink situations. These are persistent negative hauntings that have everything going on. You've got apparitions, poltergeists, disembodied voices, shadow figures, sometimes strange hybrid entities that are half human, half animal, mysterious lights in the sky, dream invasions, wasting away illnesses, all kinds of phenomena going on. And sometimes it goes on concurrently, sometimes it shifts. And oftentimes people will think there's a whole bunch of entities around, that it's this and it's that. We've got, 8 different things going on, and they're all different. They're not. They're all being created by a single type of entity, and sometimes a single entity, a single Djinn. And these really persistent cases don't resolve. All kinds of remedies can be tried, religious, folklore, spiritual, magical, and they may work for a while and then stop working, or they may not work at all. And other kinds of cases will often find a resolution. Now, some demonic cases can be very persistent as well, but here again we might really be dealing with Djinn and not demons. We just might think they're demons because they're, not every negative entity is just automatically a demon.
So when you go into a house like this and it's the kitchen sink situation, you eventually sort it out and get to the bottom of it where you can identify the perpetrator, and let's say it's a Djinn, that you have identified it is a Djinn. Then what do you do? Because it's not your typical ghost-busting scenario.
It depends on why they're there and why they're acting out, and that you have to find the reason. Many people think that dealing with unwanted entities is an open and shut case, and I will get inquiries from people saying, I have dark shadows in my home, how do I make them go away? Well, that's like going to a doctor and saying, I've got a stomach ache, do I need an operation? What's going on? Is a toothache a cold compress, a filling, or a root canal? You've got to find what the root cause is before you can determine to your best assessment what's going on and how to address it. So sometimes you have to know the life history of people. Sometimes people have a life history of all kinds of engagements with the paranormal, including entities that track them throughout their lives. And that's very important to know because these entities can go through cycles of activity where something will activate them, but they've got a very strong attachment to a person. Others are attached to the land, and they're objecting to something that people who have come onto the land, they're reacting to that. There may be something else in the mix that somebody has gone into the occult to deliberately seek engagement with these kinds of entities. Much to my surprise, there are a fair number of people out there who really want to conjure up these beings because they think they're going to get favors from them. And they seem to think it's going to be a one-way street and they will always stay on top of things and outsmart all of these entities. And they never do. It never winds up that way. But people do.
I think a lot of people, you're right, still don't understand how real this stuff is and how dangerous it can be. And then they end up in trouble when they use a Ouija board or something else to bring these things forth. So, in fact, I was just watching a video where somebody was doing something just like what you're describing, and all of a sudden there was a loud noise and the table shook and everybody got scared. Again, they didn't realize what they were dealing with and what they were bringing forth.
Sometimes people, they do get very startled by the power of things that happen. And oftentimes, it's not like Hollywood. Hollywood always exaggerates, but plenty of people do get rude shocks. Well, some of these...
Yes, they do, and I get calls from people like that who watch a little bit too much paranormal TV, and they think that they can just call on entities on their own without understanding the entire process or protection necessary, or they're walking into cemeteries trying to help people, not realizing what they're calling to themselves, and then they call up and they're hysterical because they don't understand what happened.
Exactly. Then you've got situations where people who are going through, excuse me, some kind of marked trauma are having these experiences. And these relate especially to shadow people, that the Djinn are often attracted to people who are in great stress because of the distress, the anger, sadness, depression, all of those heavy emotional energies are useful to them. And so someone going through a health crisis, a job crisis, a marital crisis can attract these entities, and they will have a spate of activity that can be very intense, but it ends pretty much when the trauma is over. So it's very important to find out what the root cause of something is.
Well, because what you're saying, though, is that there
are things that
there are shadow people and there are Djinn, and there's both, right? It's not that the Djinn just look like shadow people all the time or something else. Aren't there these things do exist apart from the Djinn? Yes?
Do you mean, do other entities exist?
Well, what I'm saying is, let's say, for example, the Djinn take on the shape of the shadow people. Mm-hmm. That doesn't negate the fact that there are also shadow people separate from the Djinn.
I came to the conclusion that shadow people are Djinn.
Oh, you did?
And they are not the same as dark ghosts. There are ghosts that seem to have rather low levels of energy perceptible to human beings and look darker than other ghosts. But and there are demons who take on dark forms. But the shadow person form, which is the tall human, usually looking like a male in a coat, a cape, a hood, a cowl, or a hat, those are Djinn. And their pattern of behavior is very predictable. It falls into there's a core shadow person encounter and sub-satellites of that with varying characteristics. It is extremely predictable. I've studied hundreds and hundreds of cases, and I've analyzed all of the elements in those patterns, and they all point back to Djinn. So that's the conclusion that I state also in the Djinn connection, is shadow people are Djinn.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that that's what they were. Because I know there's been a lot of discussion recently about shadow people appearing, and people were trying to determine what they were and what they were trying to do. So you're saying it's simple. It's the Djinn. It
is a very good form for them, because as a black silhouette, they are masked. They throw off a lot of very negative energy, even evil energy by some people's descriptions, and people are instantly not just frightened, they're terrified to the bone. Many shadow people experiences are the most terrifying of all kinds of entity encounter experiences, and they are, I believe, one of the most common experiences we have. People have passed them off to ghosts, to demons, to unknown entities for a while, until I concluded that they were Djinn. I just called them ultra-terrestrials. They were unknown entities from a dimension connected to Earth with a negative agenda toward human beings. And
so they're basically harassing us. I mean, because they're scaring us, they're harassing us, and then do they feed off that fear energy?
They do, and they have multiple motives for showing up in shadow person form. It's here again, we have to liken it to human beings. Human beings are not gingerbread men, all looking the same and all doing the same. We have a variety of motives for doing the things that we do. Well, some of the shadow people are observers. That seems to be primarily what they do. They observe. If you turn the light on or react to them, they go away. And it's not because they're frightened of people. It's because they really don't want you to know what they're up to. Others will come and attack. Why they attack, it's very difficult to know, but they will attack people at night. Even the observers will instill fear in people. Fear, for one thing, keeps people away. When you're horribly frightened about something, you don't want to know anything about it other than you want it to go away. So it's a way of keeping people from really knowing too much about what they're up to. Others will carry on a campaign of terror. They will attack people in bed. They will shape-shift into different forms. I've seen them shape-shift into, take on the form of balls, pillars, myths, human-like forms. Sometimes they will have eyes. Most of the time they don't. They can be ghost-like. They can look like human beings. They will shape-shift into sexual objects if they want to have sexual activity with people. They are participating in the abduction scenario. Interestingly, the shadow people don't seem to be part of the abduction itself. They usually precede the abduction and sometimes follow the abduction. They're part of the side phenomena that goes on around the abduction experiences. I've speculated that they are also engaged in the abduction itself, but they're in another shape-shifted form. When they're in shadow people form, they're not actually doing that kind of abduction, the ET abduction. However, there are people who have shadow people encounters who describe them as attempted abductions, where the shadow people will grab their feet and attempt to pull them off the bed. They have the impression that this entity wants to take them somewhere, and it's not going to be very pleasant.
Now, when you encounter a Djinn in someone's home, and you determine this is what it is, what is the procedure for getting rid of it? Is it the same as any other entity, or do you have to do special things?
Here again, it depends on why it's there in the first place, what exactly it's doing and why it's there. You would have to tailor a remedy to the individual situation. I'm not an exorcist, so I don't perform exorcisms. I have witnessed and assisted in those kinds of activities, not in the classic Christian sense of, the demonic sort of exorcism, but from an unwanted entity standpoint. You have to take into account the victim's spiritual and religious foundation. It may be very important for them to approach things from their own religious perspective. And sometimes simple things work the best. You just have to try a variety of things. There are, as I mentioned, magical, folklore, and other kinds of remedies that have worked throughout the ages, but none of them work in 100% of the cases. So for simple shadow visits, if it's just shadow people visits and nothing else, where an entity comes into the bedroom and terrifies the victim when they wake up and see this figure by the bed, something like prayer could be effective, turning the lights on, leaving the lights on all night, what I would call righteous anger, projection of get out of my space. Sometimes people will try religious remedies, iron, folklore remedy against spirits, magical amulets like the Seal of Solomon, various kinds of religious exorcisms. I've had cases where we've tried religious exorcisms of every possible stripe you can think of, and none of them have been effective. So
now, when you're in these places and you see the shadow people, do you also see portals open in that place or not?
Well, I don't know if seeing portals open is
like
well, at least for me, not
the doorway or the gateway.
Well, some of these areas are in portal areas. They're what I call hot zones. They have a long history of lights in the sky, mysterious craft in the sky, mysterious creatures like Bigfoot, dogmen, other things running around. A lot of the houses are haunted. There are a lot of troubled relationships. People move into an area and their lives fall apart and they move out. They have a syndrome of things going on, or they're known to be problem places or cursed lands. So those are some of the characteristics that identify a portal. Anytime you engage with the spirit world or ask to have contact with the spirit world, you are opening a portal. And you don't need to see it with your eyes. You are opening it with your thoughts and intention. And most of these are temporary portals. They open and close as we probe into the spirit realm and then withdraw from it. But where they're energized by the land, and there are configurations in the land that, here again, we find characteristics. There's literally a geophysical profile that is associated with a lot of these hot zone areas. So sometimes you can sense the energy on the land. It's dousable. You can douse a lot of portals. Some of them are so big you couldn't. You would be, many square miles. But in a residence that's very troubled, you can often find some of the pockets that are particularly problematic. They can be easily doused with rods, for example. Most ghost hunting equipment is not very reliable for finding these things because it senses the wrong kind of energy, and you're better off developing your psychic ability so you can perceive it yourself.
Now, when you look at these creatures and you see them, because obviously you're psychic, what do you see when you get beyond the shape-shifting form that they're using? What do they look like?
Nobody knows what the true form of the Djinn is, and that goes way back to their earliest legends. You have beings that were formed from the winds, formed from smokeless fire. They have no known fixed shape. And so I would have to say I've never really seen a Djinn in its true form, whatever it is. I have seen shape-shifted forms of entities. But that can be applied across the board to all kinds of beings. And in the Djinn connection, when I talk about fairies, and Djinn have a very strong connection to the fairy realm, one of my favorite quotes is from William Butler Yeats, who was a very accomplished occultist. He was in the Golden Dawn and very interested in fairy lore. And he was answering the question of why are fairies in so many different shapes and sizes? And his comment was, fairies appear to us how they want to appear and how we are able to perceive them. So we've got two factors going on. We've got beings who choose how they will present themselves to us and whether or not we will see them at all. And I think that is entirely within their choice, whether we have any sort of perception of them. And then our own ability of our worldview, with the input, the sensory input into the brain, with how we can make sense of that information, our ability to perceive them. So are we ever seeing the true form of anything? Probably not.
Which makes it even more perplexing.
It does.
Well, it does.
Yeah, it does. And on that note, I think that we will continue this amazing discussion with Rosemary Guiley when we return. Please stay with us and call in. Call in your question to talk to Rosemary at 646-478-0828. We'll be right back.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Sometimes life can be a challenge. Would you like insight and guidance to help you make the best choices right now? Contact Helene at angelslighthouse.com to make your personal appointment for a psychic reading or energy alignment. Helene is a direct channel to the angelic realm and is remarkably capable of connecting to the living as well as to your loved ones on the other side. Helene is available to clients all over the world via phone or Skype, and it's simple to set up a group reading anywhere. Visit angelslighthouse.com, where you'll find an easy way to schedule right online. And while you're there, sign up for the Angels Lighthouse newsletter and receive information on all the free energy circles, giveaways, and jewelry with a message. Visit angelslighthouse.com and contact Helene today.
And we're back with our fascinating conversation with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. And Rosemary, would you like to give the name of your website and your book again, your most recent book?
My main website is visionaryliving.com, and djinnuniverse.com, DJINN, is an educational website which I established to help acquaint people who are unfamiliar with the Djinn to just start learning things about them. And it's gotten to be a very interesting website with posts from people all over the world about their knowledge, their experiences, and questions and answers. Everybody who has had encounters with these beings says the same thing. Do not go looking for them. It's more trouble than it's worth. If you engage with them, you may never get rid of them for your entire life. They're tricky, deceitful, problematic. They can get the upper hand on you and nothing flat. Just don't go there.
Has anybody
and
ever
yet
had a
there are
positive
people
experience?
who continue to want to have some sort of interaction. I guess it's our fascination with the thrill of the dark side. But it's a real eye-opener, Djinn Universe, and I recommend it to people just to get an overview. The Djinn Connection is my new book, and that's available on my websites as well as on Amazon in print and in ebook form.
Rosemary, has anyone ever reported a positive experience with the Djinn?
Yes, they have. And there are people who say, and some of my Muslim sources from the Middle East have acknowledged it too, that there are benevolent Djinn, and there are Djinn who will do people favors. It is said that these Djinn work very quietly. The negative ones are brasher and more out there about how they're interacting with humans, but there are some benevolent ones that work very quietly. But I've also been told, and I do think this is the case, that the Djinn who are not hostile to us are inclined not to want to have anything to do with us at all. It's just we're not on their radar, and they're more involved in their own activities. It's said that they are organized in families and societies, and they have lifespans, and
what are their lifespans? Are they longer than ours or shorter?
In all the lore about them, it said that they live for many thousands of years.
Oh, my.
So that gives them a much different perspective in dealing with human beings. For example, if we get relief from an entity problem and it goes away for years or even much of our lifetimes, for us it's a permanent solution. For them, it could be a break. They will come back to the same area. They will come back to the next generation of the same family. It's an entirely different perspective. But even so, even with the Djinn who are positive, most people in the cultures who are more versed on the Djinn say it's just better if you leave them alone altogether. They are
don't
just
call upon them.
Very unpredictable to deal with.
So nobody should rub their Aladdin's lamp and hope the genie comes out, because it won't be a pleasant experience, probably.
Well, I have a question, Rosemary. Oh,
you're going to have the tables turned on you at some point, usually. So, if you're looking for spiritual help, there are better directions, and our connection to the divine, however we personally define that, that's the way to go, and not to look for quick solutions through entities that have personal motives and objectives themselves. That's another characteristic about the Djinn in some of these problem cases, is that they're in it because of their personal interests. It's what's in it for them. It's not necessarily a fight for your soul, although there are Djinn who will act on that level of activity. But the cases that I see that are the problem hauntings, it's, hey, you stepped on my toes, so I'm going to get back at you sort of thing. And it really is not some big struggle for the eternal fate of your soul.
Well, I have a question, Rosemary. You talked about Djinn being largely unknown in this culture, and that we label it as other dark energies, whatever that label is, whether it's demonic or ET or whatever you want to call it. Does it really matter what the label is to us when we go in to clear that or try to resolve the issue? Does it matter whatever name we put on it and how we deal with it?
It's a question that really has no good answer, and I've wondered that myself, because we have throughout the ages all of these remedies and approaches that are geared to beings that we've put certain labels on. And, for example, in the Christian context, negative spirits are demons, and you're dealing with servants of Satan who have certain objectives, certain characteristics of behavior. There's certain ground rules with them, so to speak. And so the remedies are proceeded upon accordingly. The Djinn are wild cards. They don't have any ground rules like that. And there are things that are effective against them. They have certain patterns of behavior. They are known in certain ways. So does it make a difference whether or not we would apply, say, a Catholic exorcism to a Djinn case? I guess the bottom line is, if it gets rid of the entity, then you've accomplished your objective. And from an Islamic perspective, the Djinn can follow whatever faith they want. There are Christian Djinn, non-believing Djinn, Muslim Djinn. The Quran is preached to the Djinn and humans alike for redemption. and the Djinn are invited to become believers as well. And when they do, then they are considered to be much different than the evil Djinn. So, I've had people say to me, well, if you're dealing with Djinn, it has to be, you have to take a Middle Eastern approach, a Muslim approach to, and look to those kinds of remedies to get rid of it. But yet, we don't always have those resources available, especially here in the West. So we have to find other solutions, and sometimes they're effective and sometimes not. I've had cases where people literally move because they can't take it anymore. They've tried everything for years, and it's finally worn them down, so they just get out. And that's not a very satisfactory situation.
It really isn't. I mean, if you have to leave your home behind and you take off in the middle of the night because you're scared, that's not a good solution. Sometimes,
but it happens. It really does happen, and I would never tell someone that they have to move. I would never make that recommendation. People can't just pack up and pull out on short notice. But on the other hand, sometimes that winds up being the end point that people arrive at. It's like, well, we've tried everything, and this is now intolerable, and so let's just get out of here.
Yeah, that would be a very unsatisfying end to an experience for me, for example. I wouldn't like that at all. But it's also interesting that you're saying that some people have mentioned that you need to go to the Islamic culture to find remedies for this, because this is where it is a Middle Eastern concept that we do have, yes, everywhere across the world is what you're saying, but didn't it originate there? So they have ways in those cultures of dealing with the Djinn?
They originated, the myths about them originated in the Middle East and spread throughout the Mediterranean, and they were absorbed into other demonologies. But take, for example, the fairies. In the first book that I did, The Vengeful Djinn, I have several chapters where I compare Djinn to other entities, like can you lay a Djinn template on them, and how good a fit is it? And the best fit of all is with fairies. There are so many similarities between the Djinn and the fairies that one could conclude that they are one and the same. And I'm not talking about the pleasant little beings that people have happy experiences with today out in nature. I think these may be an entirely different kind of being. I'm talking about the fairies that our ancestors were terrified of because they acted just like the Djinn act. And in Middle Eastern lore, the fairies are. There are fairies in Middle Eastern lore, and the fairies are a type of Djinn. So we have all of these stories about fairies, and in our culture, because we have so much of the Celtic lore that was brought in by the immigrants, fairies to us are Celtic-based beings. But fairies exist all over the place, too. So we get into these murky areas where we're not dealing with a pie chart here. You can never make a pie chart of all this stuff with neat little boundaries because those boundaries don't exist. It's a constantly blurry, shape-shifting landscape where one thing just sort of slides into another.
Now,
which came first? Was it fairies? Was it Djinn? Are they all one and the same? I can't tell you the number of people who have said to me, look, Rosemary, it's us, the angels, and Djinn. That's it. The Djinn account for all of this stuff. And I'm talking about people who've researched the Djinn for many years and who've had intimate experience with them. Are they right? I haven't felt comfortable with that conclusion myself in my research, but we have to. Anyone who's a researcher, you have to be open to the possibilities, and you have to follow the evidence. You have to follow those leads and see where they go. I was not prepared. When I started tracking shadow people, 9 years ago, I started in earnest with a major research project. I never would have guessed that I would have wound up with the Djinn and abducting ETs. But the tracks were there, and I followed the tracks, and the evidence, it's not, the evidence is not just stuff that sprang into being yesterday. It's evidence that has been around a very long time.
Well, yeah, this is one of the stories I wanted to ask you about, actually, because you refer to the August 1955 case in rural Kentucky when the goblin creatures from a UFO, basically held siege against the Taylor family and the Sutton family. So I thought this story was just great. I mean, of course, I thought it was great because it didn't happen to me, but it sounds like those people were scared to death and they were firing shots at these little goblins, and they were just doing backflips. They could have cared less about the guns that were being fired at them. But there is this report that says that these little goblin creatures came from a UFO. And I love the story.
It's a fabulous story. And, of course, in the UFO literature, these beings were compared to fairies. This is not a new comparison. For decades now, ufologists have pondered the similarity between descriptions of UFO occupants and their behavior and the fairy lore. So we have the connection between ETs and fairies. We have fairies and Djinn. There are dark fairies. There are men in black. And we have connections between the Djinn and ETs. Things just keep, forming this interlocked picture that gets to be very intriguing. The Hopkinsville case, for people who are not familiar with that, a rural family sees this craft seem to come out of the sky, and it lands on their property, and these little goblin-like beings come out, and they act like, a circus sideshow. They jump all over the house, they pound on the roof, they peer in the windows, they try and shoot them, the bullets go through them. They run and get the sheriff, they make a break for it, they run and get the sheriff, when the sheriff comes back, boop, they're all gone. And then as soon as the sheriff leaves, they're back. And they terrorize this family all night, and at daybreak they disappear and no one sees them again. We have so many stories out of fairy lore like that, where suddenly the fairies appear and they bedevil someone, like they're having a good time. And then just as suddenly as the attack starts, it stops. My feeling about the craft is I'm going to side with the people who say these are interdimensional constructs. These are not spaceships coming from other planets. They're interdimensional. We're dealing with beings who are attached to the Earth and living in parallel dimensions. There are a number of possibilities. One is that the appearance of craft to us is some sort of frequency or energetic breakthrough between dimensions that this hole gets punched in to our reality, and we perceive it as a craft coming from the sky. Another possibility is, and this is favored by many Djinn people, that these are things created by the Djinn to fool around with us, to make us think we're dealing with aliens when in fact we're really not. So we don't really have any good answers, but we do know that finding hard evidence of these craft is extremely difficult.
Yes, I mean, that is one of the biggest questions. And then there's also a lot of material that has come out that says that the government actually has these craft. They're just not telling us about it, but that the craft do exist. And there may be more than one type of UFO, and that's my personal belief. I think that some are interdimensional, but some do come from other planets. And I can't wait to find out. Everybody keeps talking about disclosure. So
right.
If there ever is disclosure, it would be nice to know about these spaceships that they claim to have under cloak and key, so that we can't see what they've been hiding away from us. But yeah, I think that why not? Why couldn't it be more than one reality with all of this stuff with the ET?
Oh, I agree entirely, and I also agree that we probably have been and are being visited by beings from other planets, that there are genuine extraterrestrials involved in this. Here again, we seem to want to homogenize things, and it has to be all of this or all of that. I've had people insist to me that the ETs, they're all space brothers, and they don't allow for any negative activity whatsoever. It's all space brother, good guy stuff. And yet the negative things, the heavy agendas, the abduction scenarios, do not preclude benevolent beings. We probably have a real mix of things going on from a variety of sources.
That's what it appears to be. I mean, this is why I'm saying it's so perplexing, because how do you know what you're really dealing with in any given moment unless you are an incredibly talented seer and you can see beneath the shape that's being presented to you? I mean, I guess you have to really develop your own psychic skills so that you can see beyond.
It gets to be very tricky, and the level of masquerading, I've asked myself this, well, how do we really know when we're dealing with something genuine and there still isn't yet another Oz behind the curtain? And in some of these cases, there are disturbingly no good answers. And then you start to get into scenarios like the Matrix. Are we really dealing with a Matrix-like reality that is a complete illusion perpetrated on us? And some of the implications are very unsettling. So how deep does this go? I think that we really have just scratched the surface. There are the researchers who have gone into the dark side of the abduction scenario, for example, have uncovered a tremendous amount of very disturbing material indicating pervasive and long-standing invasive manipulation of the human race, perhaps for a variety of reasons. And here again, not just one grand cosmic game plan. And a lot of this seems to be going on right in front of us. And we either dismiss it as, those are weird things that happen to all those fringe people. That's something else. It's not happening to me. And we have really no idea of what the undercurrents are going on around us all the time, how much we might be being influenced and manipulated.
And that's true, and I think that you have brought up this point earlier in a different way, because if we are dismissing it ourselves or being dismissed by somebody in authority, whether it be with a religious institution or in a therapeutic situation, it doesn't really give us a chance to take a good look at this and integrate the material and then be able to move on from that point. It just keeps everything kind of in a state of flux. Well, you believe it, you don't believe it, but how can any of this be helpful information?
And, I've never been a conspiracy theorist or enthusiast even, and probing into some of these areas and thinking of possible implications, it does get to be very, very unsettling. One of the problems I have with some of the abduction material, the way it's emerged, is that it's a lot of it seems to have been put into these cookie-cutter molds, and the media is partly to blame for this, because the media seizes on certain themes and images, and then we just get fed these things back endlessly, like the little grays. All these abducting aliens are the little grays with the big bug eyes. And I think that they are probably a minority of all the beings interacting with us. In fact, if you look at the earlier abduction literature, abduction and contact literature, more the contact literature, the descriptions that people have of these entities, it's literally like opening up a fairy book. They have all kinds of appearances and descriptions and behavior patterns. It's not just the little grays. So I don't like to see things forced down this channel where the whole abduction scenario seems to have to fit a limited range of characteristics.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that I remember Dr. Andrija Puharic, who was a major force in paranormal research many years ago. He had cataloged a certain number of different extraterrestrial races, and he had been involved in this type of research since, I believe, before 1945, when he was involved in Project Penguin with the U.S. Navy. So there's just so much information that still has not come to light about the different types of extraterrestrials. Obviously, people have had different abduction experiences, and as Helene and I have discussed at length, it does seem like for a long time there were a lot of abductions that were being reported, and missing time and all of the things that go along with it, all of those elements. And then everything seemed to stop. Now it seems to be starting back up again. So it's all very curious as to why it's happening now. And as you mentioned, there's some cookie-cutter stuff, but there's some other things that are very different. I mean, I was privy to a case that occurred, and this was of a young girl who was abducted in 1952, and the whole experience came out not under hypnosis. As far as I know, she's the only person who was put under sodium amytal under the care of a psychiatrist, which is truth serum. Under this truth serum, all of the abduction information came out. These were extraterrestrials. They took her in a ship, not once but twice. And again, this is under sodium amytal, not under just hypnosis, where we could think somebody's being in some way influenced. So do these things exist, and are they real? Are they from other planets? I think in some cases the answer is yes.
Some of these things do seem to go in cycles and waves, but I think also a lot of this appearance of activity can be literally blamed on the media, either putting the spotlight on something or not paying attention to it. And I think once the novelty wore off of the abduction scenario, then we started seeing less of it in the mass media. But these experiences were not going away. You know, I deal with them all the time. Other researchers do. They're still going on. And we certainly saw that with the angels, for example, in the 90s. Suddenly the mass media discovered the angel stories, and we had documentaries and angel programs all over the place. You would have thought there was, a mass invasion of angels, when in fact people throughout the ages have had angel experiences. They either didn't talk about them or they just didn't catch on in popular fancy, and they've continued even after that wave died down. They never really went away. So the media does manipulate us a lot in terms of what we think is going on.
Oh, there's no question that the media puts their own spin on things, mainstream media especially. But let me ask you a question about another strange experience that had a lot of witnesses, and that's Mothman. Do you believe that Mothman is also somehow connected to the Djinn?
Mothman fits a very good profile for Djinn, and a Djinn that would be, sort of like the equivalent maybe of a young person in our culture or even a teenager. Mothman seems to have been like an accidental tourist, so to speak. There's this portal opening that occurs in the Mid-Ohio River Valley in 1966 to 67, and actually it spills before and around those years, but those were the core years for Mothman, where there's this sudden wave of a lot of activity, and a lot of it is UFO related. In fact, most of it has to do with craft, lights, and alien entities associated with those. And the Mothman being suddenly shows up in Point Pleasant and also other communities and terrifies people. It's something that people have never seen before, this humanoid that has wings and red eyes set into what appear to be would be the equivalent of our shoulder blades, can lift straight up like a helicopter, can seem to fly through the air without moving its wings. and people are understandably terrified. The interesting thing about this entity is that it acts almost lost rather than on some big, assault mission. It
That's
never
interesting.
really.
How do you feel that? Why do you feel that way? That it acted lost?
The descriptions of the witnesses who had encounters with it, the very first time that it was seen by the couples who were out in the car late at night outside of town in the area known as the TNT grounds, it was seen looking like it got its wing caught on something, and it seemed to be very distressed by this and confused. It didn't seem to know what had happened to it. It was very curious about people. It followed them in their car, the two couples, and, of course, they were terrified. It followed them in their car into town and then peeled off. There were other people who had scares in their house when it came and peered in the windows at them, but it never out and out attacked anyone. It seemed to want to know about people, like if you were suddenly, if you went down the rabbit hole and you were in some strange land, you would act in similar ways. And so Mothman is makes various appearances around in the area, but the real action, which is documented very well by John Keel in the Mothman Prophecies, is on the UFO front. People have the men in black, the poltergeist activity, the alien beings who make contact with them, all of the high strangeness which is associated with a major UFO flap is going on in this area. And Mothman really is a minor player in that, even though this entity has gotten center attention. Well, this is the form that Mothman has of this dark humanoid, and the eyewitnesses have described it as having more like fur on its body rather than feathers. The whole Mothman name was like a flip remark from a journalist.
I wondered where that came from. Okay, that's interesting.
It was a journalist who dubbed it Mothman. It never looked like a moth. It never even looked like a bird, really. So it wanders around like it sort of fell through some interdimensional opening and didn't quite know what to do. And it seemed to have found
the bridge? Because there was that big bridge collapse, and there was a lot of talk about, well, did Mothman cause it, or did he just observe it? Was he just here to observe this kind of catastrophe? So that was a question that was kind of left up in the air, not completely answered also.
It still has some very odd things hanging loose on that. My own feeling is that Mothman did not cause the bridge to collapse. There was an incredible buildup of psychokinetic energy in this wave, with people getting more and more wound up and the phenomena starting to get more and more wound up. And the bridge collapse could have been tied in with that kind of energy. However, since then, Mothman has become associated with disasters. I believe this to be a lot of projection on our part, where we have disasters around the world, and then immediately we hear reports about, oh, yes, somebody saw Mothman in the vicinity before this happened, but they're usually post-reports.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I think now
he's a fascinating character, and that's why I wanted to bring that back around to your, to what you're talking about with the Djinn, because he was a definite anomaly. I don't think that he's been spotted anywhere else in the world. It was just a one-time thing, just in that area.
There are people who say that they have Mothman sightings, but I think it's more like shapes that can be interpreted like Mothman. We've had even some of the sightings that have been around the world have been of winged humanoid kinds of entities, which have been reported in the paranormal literature way before Mothman ever showed up. But the form that Mothman has, about this kind of weird hybrid sort of thing, it seems to be part bird or part animal and part human. this would be very characteristic of Djinn, a shape-shifted Djinn. And whether or not that was the form of this entity in its own dimension before it landed in ours, or that's how we perceived it. It could very well be that this is how human beings were capable of perceiving this entity. Remains unknown.
It's a fascinating study. I think that one in particular has always piqued my interest. But one of the things you also bring up in your book is Black Death and the hostile Djinn who want to retake the earth, and one of the best ways to do that is to eliminate us through this type of biological warfare. So can you talk to us about that a little bit?
I started wondering about some of the Djinn agendas, that if the Djinn have for a very long time, in fact, we could say the entire human history, if some of them have had a grudge against human beings, they surely must have made efforts to damage or destroy us on large scales. People have asked, well, if they have all these superpowers and they can come through interdimensional openings, why haven't they just come in and wiped us out? And it may not be for lack of trying, which is what the Black Death may have been involved. Now, whether or not they're just not able to engineer things sufficiently, or, as some people have suggested, there are spiritual laws against it, or there aren't enough of them to do it, nobody really knows. But in surveying the UFO literature and ET contact literature, when I started making the connections between Djinn and ETs, I went back through literature that I had read previously, but I was reading it with a new eye. I was looking for, if the Djinn are involved in this scenario, they've left their tracks already, and we just haven't realized it. We haven't seen them for what they are. And yes, this evidence is around. And I was very intrigued by some material in William Bramley's book, The Gods of Eden, where he talks about these mysterious black figures that preceded outbreaks of the plague in Europe, which took about a quarter of the population of Europe down. And these black figures, and here again we've got the associations with the men in black and the shadow people, they were strangers. And of course, back then, when strangers, everybody knew it when strangers would come into a town or a village, but they would show up, and sometimes they would be carrying what appeared to be brooms or long instruments, and they would be out swishing around in the fields like they had scythes. And they would also knock on the doors of people, and in their wake would be an outbreak of the plague, that wherever they knocked, those families, people would get sick. A lot of people in villages would get sick. And, Bramley speculates on them in terms of, were there implements that they were carrying, were there some kind of weaponry that discharged something that brought this illness to the area.
It was devastating. It killed so many people. Yet again, it's an interesting connection between Black Death and the plague and the Djinn.
And then also in these same areas, we have accounts of outbreaks of aerial activity, strange lights in the sky. So it's an interesting constellation of phenomena which point to, these are things that would be associated with Djinn activity. So one of the things that I say in the Djinn Connection is that we really do need to re-examine a lot of our earlier accounts of supernatural activity where human beings have suffered mass outbreaks of things that have been blamed on in the past, witchcraft or vampires or whatever, if there isn't something else afoot, and that we also need to re-examine our accounts of engagements with gods and demigods. How deeply are the Djinn salted among them as well?
Yeah. Now, Helene, have you ever had any experiences with Djinn?
I've seen a few objects that had Djinn attached to them.
And what did they look like?
Well, they can appear any way they want to. I mean, when I see a lot of these entities, they're pure energy to me. So to me, it's energy that's given a form that we're able to connect to, either positively or negatively. But they will come through, the ones that I've seen, the few that I've seen attached especially to ancient artifacts. They come through as light, but they don't feel light. And so the idea is, it doesn't, to me, when I look at something like that, I'm looking at the energy of it. And if the energy doesn't feel right, I get rid of it. I don't want to connect to that. I understand it's not what I want to connect to. And so it doesn't matter to me what label you put on it. But I got the clear information that it was Djinn on a couple of occasions. So,
well, you just
I've
raised
never
an
had
interesting
a good feeling about
the psychic.
I've never had a good feeling about them. Yeah.
The psychic perception of these entities, and they have their own energy signature to them, their own psychic energy signature, which if a person deals a lot with the spirit world, you learn how to sense their energy patterns. It's beyond just getting a name and seeing something visually. It's you're sensing the intrinsic energy frequency pattern of them, and the Djinn have their own distinct signature that way.
Yeah, and that's why I felt that these couple of occasions it was definitely Djinn. And whatever you want, whatever I want to call it, whatever label or name I put on it, that's not what I'm going by. I'm going by, how does it feel? How does it look? Is this truth or not truth? Is it in the light of God the way I want to perceive it? And that's how I process it. I feel that a lot of the energy that I've cleared that is dark energy, and I'll just call it dark energy because it's tormenting people or whatever, often people say, it's a demon, it's a demon. I don't feel like it's a demon. I wasn't quite sure it was a Djinn all the time, but it doesn't matter what the dark energy is, it's bothering someone, and it needs to go, And so often there's a lot of success in certain ways in dealing with this with people, especially if you, as you said earlier, very wisely, you have to know the people's background, you have to know why their energy is connecting with this, why this thing either just appeared or is part of their actual system, and so forth. Most of the time, the ones I've run across, they can be cleared, but there have been some really tough cases that cannot be cleared. It goes very deep in some people, and it goes back to past life connections sometimes, don't you think, Rosemary?
Yes, I do see that, especially in cases that are multi-generational. And in Djinn lore, this is well acknowledged that Djinn will attach themselves to people and follow them through their incarnations. They will follow certain family and bloodlines. And here again, if these are entities who have these long lifespans, they have a totally different perspective on us. And seeing us bounce from lifetime to lifetime and generations come and go, it's part of a day's activity for them. And it's a whole different, from their perspective, how they would be interacting with us then becomes very perplexing from our perspective. There are, family curses where individuals have run afoul of the Djinn or made certain deals with the Djinn, and the Djinn will follow family lines to get what they feel is their due. So all kinds of things in the mix, yes. And I would agree that in most cases, when I've gone into problem situations, it is possible to clear a lot of things, and most cases will resolve. Over the years, as I've gotten deeper into the Djinn, I've taken on more of these tough cases that don't resolve very well. My feeling is, however, that these tough cases what we're seeing is a tip of the iceberg, that they are more prevalent than we might like to think, and I believe they are on the increase.
So, yes, they have been on the increase. That's pretty plain. With I think, I don't know what you think about this, Rosemary, but there's been all kinds of gateways of light and shifts in energy all around the planet. And part of it is almost like a battle, but I don't want to get into that. It's just that there's been a lot of opening, and it's sort of like shaking out a carpet. So if the light is coming in, then the dark is going to come in, and it just seems like a lot of this is sort of amped up in the last 3 or 4 years. What do you think of that?
I agree entirely. We are seeing major shifts in these interdimensional boundaries. Our consciousness is changing collectively. Our ability to perceive these things is shifting, and part of that is we're putting more attention on it. All of these interests in the paranormal, for example, are focusing more attention on it. And the people who are not properly prepared to deal with this are going to be more likely to have problems. A lot of these entities, just for the sake of alliteration, I call them drive-by demons. Even though they're not necessarily demons per se, but they're opportunistic, negative spirits who are looking for the easy targets. And the people who are not spiritually prepared, and I'm not talking about a religious sense, I'm talking about a spiritual sense, they are going to be the first ones that will be focused on and targeted by these entities. And I think we're seeing a lot of that happening right now. We are moving into, we're already in the early stages of this. The interdimensional Earth is what's emerging. It's existed all along. It's just that we're finally developing the consciousness to perceive it and participate in it, and it's a real rocky opening.
Yes. Let me ask you a question. I don't mean to turn the subject, but you mentioned angels and divine energy earlier in the show. And, you know, it's my personal belief that the more we connect to the divine, the more we connect to the light of God and all of that, and not in any specific religion in you know, the usual sense, but in spirituality, in love inside ourselves, the less the occurrence of this kind of interruption is.
Yes, I agree, and I always recommend to people that one of their best defenses is finding their spiritual center, and that part of that is a daily practice of meditation, which is like working out in a spiritual gym.
Meditation is, Rosemary, meditation is such a dirty word because people think that they have to sit cross-legged on the floor for 5 hours every day, and that's not really what it is at all.
It's your focused attention inward and also on your connection to the divine. And I've been meditating for most of my adult life, and it does have an effect. It has effect on your aura, and your aura is one of your defenses against invasion by predatory entities. If you have a very strong buffer around you, it's much harder for them to get in or to stay in. And people in the paranormal investigation community, I find, are especially vulnerable because they're attracted to the fun and the glamour and the excitement of it, but they jump in like, they're diving into the deep end of the swimming pool without knowing how to swim. They're unprepared for engaging with any kind of spirit presence. The residual stuff from many hauntings, that's one thing, but intelligent entities, that's another, and they can really get thrown for a loop. So I've always advocated that people undertake this spiritual training on their own, and it doesn't require huge chunks of time to do it.
Well, it doesn't. That's absolutely true. I mean, you can do it in 10 minutes. And another thing, too, is the level of fear. I think a lot of these entities are drawn to fear. They feed off it, as you mentioned earlier. And if you're not afraid, it's not fun for them.
It's not. And
they can move on.
This is what the media feeds us, is fear. All of these paranormal reality shows are all fear-based, and the people who I know who are in these shows are all saying the same thing, as the production studios are telling them, we've got to have more running and screaming, because that's what sells. And the audience gets jaded. In the beginning it was okay to see ghost hunting that didn't amount to anything, your place isn't haunted, that sort of stuff. And now it's got to be people are in danger, they're terrified, there's creepy stuff out there just waiting to jump out and get them. So they've had to ratchet up the fear factor just to keep the audience. And that conditions us as well. We're conditioned to be afraid of this. With the Djinn, this becomes a crucial tactic with them, that when they can get a reaction of fear out of people, they immediately gain a very strong upper hand. And sometimes it's hard not to be frightened, especially when you're startled by something. Your immediate reaction might be a very visceral kind of fear. So
yeah, I think that's absolutely true, because I had an experience with the shadow people when I first moved to this area, and I had gotten extremely ill, and I was just in the doorway of life and death for about 4 or 5 days, and I saw them clearly, but I wasn't afraid of them. So I watched them, they watched me, it was no big deal. But it was a fascinating experience also for me to have that understanding of them and not be afraid. And I think that that's something that, again, due to the media, due to also our lack of skill as a culture in working with the paranormal, we immediately jump to fear. It's something we haven't seen before. Let's be afraid of it instead of let's just observe it. And I think that's the skill that you can develop through meditation.
Yes, absolutely. And with some of these entities, and here again it depends on the entity and their motivation and ability to make a connection in this reality, as soon as you've demonstrated that you're not afraid, they lose interest. Other times not, and in fact I've had cases where people have tried to be very righteously angry, and it seems to make them even madder. It's like swatting at a wasp. So we don't have any ground rules that apply in all cases, but across the board, however, it is very important not to be fearful. This is something that we should take into our interdimensional awareness as we grow into it, that we're going to have to learn how to deal with these other realities. In fact, the very nature of our reality is, I believe, quite likely to shift in the future, and by our standards might even be totally unrecognizable. And it's going to require a lot of courage. And
yeah, so that people can, again, see into these other realms. I think from what you and Helene are saying, and I agree with completely, is that those realms are opening doorways into ours, and so things are being seen that weren't seen before. I mean, there's a lot of reports of all kinds of creatures, and again, is it the media, the internet that allows us this kind of rapid reporting, or, again, is this something that is being ramped up due to these open portals and doorways? Maybe we'll never know, but it is a matter of perception and not being afraid of this stuff, but being interested.
We are definitely being propelled by instant information now. We have instant global connection through the internet and all kinds of media. And this is a force that is permanently shaping our consciousness and our reactions to phenomena and to environment. So it's a factor that's going to increase in influence, not decrease.
Helene, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think it's important also for people to understand that in the situation of seeing entities, we are the ones who are powerful. We're in physical form, and if we stand inside of our own power and our own love and our own light, that you're right, Rosemary, they can't really have a lot of import with us, right?
Well, that is a concept that has been explored in the ET abduction scenario. And in the Djinn connection, I comment on that, and for example, and I cite some of the work of Anne Druffel, who was very involved in the Tujunga Canyon ET abduction researches, and she interviewed so many of the abductees about, if you were able to stop the attacks, how did you do it? And people have their own little pet things, of course, that work, just like we see in the negative haunting cases. But the overriding thing that is the foundation, I'm mixing my metaphors there, I'm sorry, the foundation of all of those things is sovereignty, this concept of sovereignty, that we are a self-determined free will race, and we have sovereignty in this world. Mm-hmm. Many people, when they have a terrifying paranormal experience, they give up that sovereignty, and they often do it even without thinking because they are terrified, and that's a very significant loss of power. And so the abductees who were successful at eradicating their connection to these predatory entities, found ways to assert their sovereignty. This is a term that I also apply to the Djinn cases, that the people who have been the most successful at repelling persistent, invasive encounters find some way to call up this sense of sovereignty from within themselves. And we can have these outer things that work, the trappings, the tools, the procedures, things that may help us evoke that energy from within. But it also requires this sense of spiritual connection that we've talked about too, having some connection to a far greater power that is an ally in this. Marshall Ian Summers, who's channeled a lot of work on Trojan horse kinds of entity interactions on the planet, also talks about sovereignty and the need for people to awaken to the truth that we do not need to accept these conditions that are being visited upon us.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think that's a great way to look at all of these things. And it does bring to mind Betty and Barney Hill. And Betty Hill, who I met years ago, she was a tiny little woman, but she was a spitfire. And I think it was just intrinsic to her personality that she just wasn't going to accept these terms. I mean, she was abducted, as you know. It was The Interrupted Journey was the book about her experience with her husband, Barney. But Barney was hysterical crying when they were abducted, where Betty said to me, if I'd had a frying pan, I would have taken them all out with my frying pan. So, I mean, that's the way Betty was. And yet she kept her wits about her and brought back that star map, that very famous star map where the star was then discovered many years later. But she kept her wits about her, and she said, I'm just not going to settle for this. And she's a wonderful example in history and a UFO experience of somebody who just wasn't going to go along with it.
And people do have that ability to call up that kind of personal power. And it's tied in with this concept of righteous anger, too, that it's the assertion of you do not have the right to do this to me. And people have varying degrees of ability for asserting that energy And then here again, every situation is different, and some people are dealing with very, very powerful entities, and other people lesser powerful beings. So it's not uniform, what we're dealing with. It's quite an uneven playing field. But we do have to learn how to assert that kind of energy if we're ever going to keep the upper hand.
And I love this concept that you're talking about of sovereignty and of saying to these other interdimensional beings or whatever they are, you don't have the right to enforce your will on me or to torment me or to harass me. I mean, it is not a lot different than having a person treat you badly. I mean, what really is the difference? So what if they're interdimensional? They're still a pain in the neck. And, at what point do we say no to them and stop being afraid, stop crying about it, and just do what Betty said she would do if she had a frying pan.
Exactly. Well, it's and we get back to the observations and people, the skeptics who say, well, if all of these things are possible, how come they haven't just swept in and overwhelmed us? They probably would if they could, but obviously they can't. So they've got to look for the weak points, the easy targets, the sly little inroads in order to work away. And a lot of this is a chipping away at the resolve of humanity as a whole. These beings have a big, long time span to work with. Generations of us, centuries can come and go, and it's a very small amount of time, if time even exists to them. We really have to develop this sense of rights more, that we don't just automatically start opening the door and giving away our power.
Exactly, and the Djinn is so different from what I grew up with the genie in the bottle. I mean, the genie in the bottle was just the most likable kind of guy, and here he could give you your 3 wishes and you'd be happy. Of course, the Twilight Zone then came along and twisted that into they're going to get you. One way or another, you're not going to get what you're asking for. You're going to get tricked, and that's what you're saying they're truly about. But it's, I think this whole concept is fascinating, and the idea that we have sovereignty over all of this stuff, over all of these entities, is, I think that's a very critical point that you make.
And we automatically have this view that if it's in the spirit world, it's bigger, better, more powerful than us. And it's understandable because if these beings are visible or invisible and they can do things that we can't, it does foster that impression. But, we've also had this idea about the dead throughout human history, too, that because people pass into the afterlife, they are automatically more powerful and more knowledgeable than they were on Earth. And we can't make that assumption either. So we seem to have a tendency to give our power away over and over again. Not that we shouldn't pay attention to spirits and shouldn't pay attention to the dead, but we need to see ourselves on a more equal footing.
I agree. I think that's great. That's an absolute great way to look at all of this. And to advise people so they don't have to go screaming into the night if something goes bump. It's like, get a grip and let's see if you can perceive what's truly going on here and get to the bottom of it, just like any other mystery.
Unfortunately, some religions also underscore the fear element by teaching people that the spirit world is full of demonic entities and anything paranormal is demonic, to be feared, and that sends the wrong message to people as well.
Well, it does, because then it's reinforcing their fear, and fear with no power. So you're kind of at the mercy of whatever it is that's going on in your house or your location or whatever. So, yeah, that's not a good way to be with anything.
Bottom line is, I'm very optimistic about the human condition and the human race, and we seem to have the ability to recover from all sorts of things. Anytime we've been dealt blows and we've had downturns and even dark ages, we've always rebounded. I think it's going to be critical for us, though, on rebounds, to get up to the next level, so to speak, to not just keep going in the same cycle, but to advance into new levels of awareness. And we're being presented a very significant challenge right now, and I am optimistic that human beings will ultimately rise to that challenge.
I hope so. I think that you're right. It is a challenge for sure. I mean, we are going to be changing our perception of reality. Reality is changing as we know it. So there's a lot of things that are changing. Our institutions are changing. The way we look at them are changing. And the way they're looking at us is changing. So there's a lot of things in flux right now.
And a lot of this is having to deal with the dark side, having to confront it, to deal with it, and also to expand our views on what's really going on. We're being confronted by things that don't fit into neat little boxes and neat little explanations, and literally tear apart some of our preconceived notions about how the spirit world is and what it's like. So something like the Djinn connection, I think, is a piece of the education. I'm all for education, and this is why I've always worked on both sides of the fence, the light and the dark. It's wonderful to experience enlightening phenomena and encounters and healing encounters, transformative, and I've had them too. But the ones that we fear, that dark underbelly, that's often where we need to direct most of our attention. And for various reasons, we seem to be being directed to look into the underbelly now because there's a lot going on.
There is. There's no question that there is. And again, the name of your book is The Djinn Connection. That's spelled D-J-I-N-N. It's available on your website. There's two websites, actually, that you have, visionaryliving.com and djinnuniverse.com. It's also available on Amazon. And, God, what a wonderful couple of hours here. I've learned a lot.
Amazing.
It's been great.
You're so very
we covered a lot of
eloquent.
territory.
Yeah.
Yes. Fairies, UFOs, all kinds of things. Demons. That's your favorite topic, Helene.
Yeah, it is. But, that's a label like anything for any negative energy, but it is. It's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah, it is. And you are so very eloquent, Rosemary. Thank you so much for being on our show tonight. We appreciate your valuable time.
Well,
yes,
it was a real pleasure, and I thank you very much for having me on the show and for putting the attention on this topic. I think it's much needed today.
Well, thank you so much, and I know you have such great expertise with so many different paranormal topics. We're going to have you back again, so can't wait for your next book. And for people who want to read about the Djinn, again, it's The Djinn Connection, D-J-I-N-N Connection by Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Thank you,
So
Rosemary.
thank you again.
We'll be talking to you soon.
Yes,
thank you very much.
So much. Many blessings to you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Rosemary.
And thank you for everybody in our audience who tuned in this evening. I see our chat room was filled with people, and nobody had any questions. I guess they were just in rapt attention of everything that Rosemary had to share tonight. So much information.
Oh, she's wonderful and
yes.
a wealth of wisdom and information.
And she's been involved in this for so many years. Goodness,
yeah.
She's got a long history here.
God bless her. I'd love her to do a show on how she actually, what techniques she uses to rid places and people of negative energy, too. because we all have our own techniques and our own connections to do that, people who do that kind of work. And,
I know.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, fascinating.
Yes, so we'll have to plan it.
It all goes back to the power within ourselves, really.
Well, it does, and it's like I said, when I saw the shadow people at that time in my life when I was quite ill and in the doorway, I wasn't afraid of them, and so I was able to just observe them, and that was a totally different experience than freaking out and getting nervous and adding insult to injury, basically. So instead, I learned something about the shadow people. It'll be in my book.
Well, it's fascinating. yeah. But it's fascinating. One thing I want to add to, just to comment on the power within us, is that I have found there are some people who act like they would like this negative energy away from them, but when it comes to brass tacks, to really getting down to it and releasing the connection and standing in your own power, they really back off, Patricia.
Yeah.
So we really have to decide, no, they don't want to get rid of it.
Well, that's an interesting conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah, well, those negative energies will power people up, the way Rosemary was saying, and sort of give them something that they like, whether that's filling space for them, whether that's filling a false sense of love, whether that's filling additional psychic power, whatever it is, it gives them some sort of power that the person themselves is also feeding off of.
It's very seductive. Very seductive.
It is seductive. And so the idea is we have to be very sure that we're in a place in our mind and our heart that we absolutely want it gone as well.
I agree. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful. Again, I've learned so much. The book is excellent. The Djinn Connection by Rosemary Ellen Guiley. So tune in next week. Yeah, we've got more exciting topics and great guests coming your way. And, well, I guess it's time for us to say goodnight.
It is. Good night, Patricia.
Good night, Helene, and good night to our wonderful audience.
Till next week.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural.